Hello and welcome to Comics Magic, the place for independent comic book creating tips. And I have with me an amazing appearance today on the podcast, Martin Pierro, the founder and CEO of publisher of Cosmic Times and author of a variety of different books. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul. I highly appreciate the time.
As do I. I'll just share a little bit how I met you. I've been in South Florida now for about 7 years. And when I started writing my comic book, The Red Ram, I met you at a local one-day show. And you were just so open and friendly to talk about a little bit about your independent comic book publishing experience. And at that time, I bought my copy of the Takedown One Shot, which was a great story, and my first ever metal cover in my collection is yours.
Okay.
So
Cool.
that's how we met. And, what really spurred this, in addition to me doing a series of interviews to promote Bootstrapped, how to make and sell your first comic book, because that's just something, when I learn something, I devour information, and then I'm stuck with all this information, and I learned, actually years after medical school, man, if I would have been posting one thing I learned every day, I mean, one, I would have had it recorded somewhere, and it's not just selfish that I'm getting all this information, but I'm sharing it with others that might help people. So that's kind of how that idea came to me, and we can talk about that later. But
Sure.
with you, we started the Comics Magic podcast and newsletter on Substack, and so I started following you. And a few weeks ago, I read about your origins of how you knew very early on that you wanted to make comic books. Now, I didn't get that bug till I was an adult, so I'm just curious. Share a little bit about that, because I think it's a really cool story, and I'd love to hear more about it from you.
All right. Well, again, as a kid, I think we all, at least in my generation, I'm slightly older than you, we all kind of grew up, comics were just kind of there. They were always, you go to 7-Eleven, you pick up a book for, at the time, 60 cents, 50 cents. So they were always kind of part of my life. I was big into this, the Marvel Star Wars run in the 70s and the Micronauts and all that stuff, and then Fantastic Four kind of spurned out of that, and the Godzilla comics. Of course, my mom ended up throwing all those away when I was about 7 or 8 years old, but local comic shop opened up. I'll tell you the story. I was going through what we used to have this thing called the farmer's market. It was, in essence, just kind of a little bays you could buy and set up a small store in. And this guy, Rob Wilson, who I still talk to today, he had one set up, and I was walking through with my grandparents. This is how young I was, and I saw a Doctor Who comic. And at that point, I mean, I thought I was the only Doctor Who fan in the whole world, because nobody in my school liked Doctor Who. It was a weird thing, and there was a comic book about Doctor Who, and it was $1.25 at a time. Comics were like 50, 60 cents. So I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to pay for one comic. So I begged my grandparents for the money, and I bought it. And the guy at the comic shop, or had that little bay, it was called Metropolis Comics, explained what collecting comics were. I bought a bag and a board for it, and that's kind of where I got the bug to really get into collecting comics, which occupied a lot of my life from about age 12 to maybe age 16.
If I could pause you right there.
Sure.
So just interesting. Was that a Gold Key or Dell? Who published that book?
That was actually Marvel. They were reprint.
Okay.
It was actually a reprint of the British comics, which at the time I didn't realize.
And again, I'm guessing this was in the 70s.
No, this would have been early 80s at this
Early 80s.
point.
Yeah, early
Not
80s.
that old.
But it's so okay. But it's so interesting, because that really follows the history of comic books, because comics were always from newsstands, and then around the late 70s, early 80s, you had the beginnings of the secondary market. So I'm guessing Metropolis Comics, this was a stand, and although you paid $1.50, whatever, that wasn't the cover price. That was the secondary market price, right?
No, actually, that was the cover price.
Really?
Marvel was messing around. I think that was a direct to store thing too. You couldn't buy that on a news rack. It was on Baxter paper. It was a whole thing. I felt it was way too expensive for my budget, because at that point I'm selling an allowance of like, God, it's the early 80s, so it's probably like $5 a week was my allowance, if that. So I bought it, and then I got a good relationship with this guy, and I decided after a couple years I wanted to get into comics, so I created a fanzine, which at the time in the
Really?
'80s was the thing.
Oh my
You
gosh.
just
Do you still
yes,
I would love to see. I bet you have one in your office, no?
I do not. They're actually all
Oh,
down in the garage. And my office is all Cosmic Times for the most part, but not from here. See my Atari cartridges back there. But anyways, so I did a fanzine because there was no internet, obviously, and outside of Marvel Age, there was really no way readers would find out comic news. So I put together, I called it Metropolis Times, and then the guy who owned the stores goes, there are other comic shops in West Palm Beach. I'm like, there are? And so we renamed it Cosmic Times.
oh,
So that's where the name came
oh my
from.
gosh.
Yeah.
I love it.
So the
That's brilliant.
second issue was Cosmic Times, and we were just I connected with another comic store, Past, Present, Future, which is still in business today. Well, you know PPF, you're from the
Yeah.
area, and they would let me look at the order forms for the books that were coming out. So I was getting inside information I was putting into my fanzine, writing articles, interviewing whatever. I think we interviewed Martin O'Dell, the guy who made Green Lantern, the original Green Lantern, the guy who did the Mr. Munster, whoever was popular at the time, or I could meet somebody at a convention. I would do little interviews. And it kind of a little snowballed a little bit. We started shipping them to comic stores all over the country. They were 25 cents each. They cost us about 10 cents to make. We did it on a typewriter. That's a long
Typewriter and a
cut and paste.
Xerox at the local
Yep.
office.
Well,
People
my mom worked for the county, and she let us. We may have had access to some photocopiers we weren't supposed to have. The Regardless, I was into that. I got really into it. I had a huge comic collection. And then around 16, 17, I discovered this thing called Girls. And that kind of put an end to all that for a while. I would still dabble in and out of comics. But as a little kid, even before the fanzine, I used to do hand-drawn comics that I would sell to my grandparents. And I still have those too. After my grandparents passed, my mother gave them to me. And so even as a kid, like I would read Teen Titans, which is a little advanced for the age I was, and I'd read these books, but I would look at it more as, oh, look at this publishing company, look how they build it, and I think in my Substack I talked about Jim Shooter and what he was doing at Marvel, and that's kind of where I wanted to go. It wasn't, yes, I love writing's my passion, but the actual publishing and creation of comics is where I was looking toward, and continue with the origin story. Ended up going to college. I was going to go to the Ringling School of Art and become an animator, and I got talked out of it and ended up going to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale and studied television and film and video production. So that became my career for a good decade, working in film, TV, stage, even music, just all that stuff. Got a family going. Fast forward a few years, I'm working at a law firm doing IT because the work dried up. I couldn't work freelance with the family. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing this IT job at this huge law firm. And as much as I enjoyed the job and the people I worked with, it really wasn't creatively satisfying. So I'll keep going with the story if you want to hear it. I'm walking through MegaCon with my friend, and then there's this guy, Stefan Nielsen. He has this Across the Pond Publishing, and he's doing this anthology, and he's trying to recruit people to write for his anthology. And he explains to it when you do, like, oh, I can do that. I can write a story. I can, get an artist. And then anybody's like, they were charging to be in the anthology, and I was like, well, I can just do it myself. I don't need to pay you. I can just figure this out myself. I went to a few panels. Met Raven Gregory, Christian Baranek, who were all doing it on their own, and ultimately in 2007 started writing some stuff. 2008 became a company, and in 2009 I published my first issue of Arthur the Legend Continues at MegaCon under the banner Cosmic Times, because I figured why not? It worked in the 80s, it'll work in the 2000s, and I sold out at that MegaCon.
Whoa.
And I was like, ooh. I think I had 100 copies. That's all it was. And I was like, ooh, this is a business I could get into. And and it just ballooned from there. I realized I couldn't, you can't sustain a company on one title. So I started expanding, brought other talent in. At that time, the brass ring for comics was, if you can get distributed by Diamond, you're set for life. And in my third year, we nailed that. And so that was kind of like, ooh, now we've reached the brass ring. What's next? and there really wasn't much next. But ultimately, yeah. So I became a nationally distributed publisher by my fourth year doing this,
Wow.
and it's kind of just been a fun ride ever since. I hope that
Yeah.
wasn't too boring. I tried to
No,
encapsulize it.
I love it. I mean, this is exactly what we're doing. I mean, it's so cool. Again, I didn't know about the fanzine.
Yeah.
Um, and two things I just want to follow up on is, you know, when I was reading that post where you're talking about writing your comics for your grandparents, which is so awesome, and I'm sure you have some great memories of that, and the fact that you can still have those, which is cool. But your story is the closest to a Jim Shooter like story because again, you were probably just after him, but like I mean, I know I've read the stories where he was like 12 years old writing to DC Comics, right, for the Legion of Superheroes and all that stuff, and then he became editor in chief at Marvel in the 80s and with Secret Wars and all. But I just think that's really a cool thing that you really did follow that, and again, you knew from the beginning. I on the other hand was a scientist. I knew biology and cellular molecular, but like writing English was my kryptonite. All my papers would get D's and C's easily, until later on in my early adult life after medical school, I realized with a lot of hard work and years of effort, I became a writer and an author, and it has changed my life. But it was not easy for me. And the second thing is. I think we should talk a little bit of the business of comics because for me, it's a passion. I love it, and I'm still in the negative for all my books. Now I'm hoping over time that as I collect the Red Ram's going to be coming out issue 2 through 4, the complete mini series by the spring of 2026. It's right now just issues 2 and 3 the colors are being rendered, and then the letterist needs to letter them. So 2 is going to be coming out soon, and then it will live on as a graphic novel, which I'm hoping, over time it will pay me. But every time I talk to a creator, which is a little disheartening, but we have to look at the reality, and you have lived the reality, that it is a difficult business. And can you just share, again, not only are you a writer, but you're a publisher, and you've been doing this for decades now. Share a little bit about just the business of this and what are some of the realities today in 2025?
Ooh, well, the last, well, pretty much. Sorry, my chair is squeaky. This year has been a tumultuous year for comics. We'll get into the business in a second, but it's hard to gauge what the collapse of Diamond Comics distributors has done to the industry. I actually wrote a Substack last night about this. Because DC's absolute line of comics is bringing people into comic shops and they're buying books. So the comic shops aren't feeling the weight, the loss.
So that is interesting. The all-in is working for DC.
The absolute stuff, but some of the all-in too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That absolute Batman book is just a juggernaut. It's like fifth prints are selling out.
Okay.
So comic shops are kind of feeling this resurgence of buyers. At the same time, the indie market is just deteriorating on the shelves. A lot of it has to do with, I mean, we can get into that part later. It has to do with Marvel pushing everybody out of the market by oversaturation, things like that. But as far as the business of independent comics, I was doing really good. I actually quit my job at the law firm. Comics are my life now. It's my full-time job. I know you have, obviously, you have a pretty good career going there, so I would not recommend that for you. But...
Well, for me, I'm a psychiatrist, but I'll just say
right.
For me, it's a very, I mean, I love my job. I mean, for me, it's a perfect marriage of growing up being a brain zombie to movies and film, which I just love, and TV. But, that ties into the human condition, which is I get paid to sit down and talk with people. So for me, it's just like, and I get to hear their story, and they pay me to help them. So it's perfect. But also, I'm going to say emotions are contagious. If you've ever walked into a room of someone agitated or upset, you might feel it. Or next time you experience that, be aware. And also, if there's a lot of joy in the room, you might feel it. It's very subtle, but it is. And when you spend 8 hours a day doing it. So for me, comics is my love. Comics is my passion. And it balances me out. So that's why I do it. But I'm sorry.
Well, a lot of what you said, I mean, we'll get to the business in a second. A lot of what you said carries over to when you're set up at a comic convention. If the room has a lot of energy and life in it, you have a lot of it. Your sales go up. Not, and it could not. Maybe it's even not a huge con with a lot of people in it, but if there's a lot of energy in the room, you're like, hey, check out my book. Hey, this is fun, as opposed to move along, cosplayer, move along. That
So
situation.
true. And again, it's hard to quantify, but you've experienced it too. So that speaks volumes.
Yeah, but I'll get to the business now. So in 2016, well, before that, I was able to. I don't just make comics. Like I say, comics are my life. I also run a comic convention, PalmCon, and I was at a point where that was doing really well. I was in Diamond. I was putting out I think I was putting about 3 books a month. So I left my job. I started doing this full time. And about 2016, it crashed for me because I wasn't prepared for success. Like I said, this was kind of a fun passion project for me, and the business side of it got out of control.
Why?
Doing three titles a month. Your cost for printing, you have to pay that 90 days or 60 days, whatever, before you get paid from Diamond. So you're out 10 grand when you're trying to balance this business and you're trying to run a comic convention. So you're always shelling out money there, and I just wasn't prepared for the whole business side, the business side of it, and it crashed. I ended up not shipping books. Ended up pulling out of Diamond for a while and trying to reset things. It was a pretty bad couple years there, and then I've kind of reestablished Cosmic Times more of a boutique publisher. You need to scale to what you can handle, and then slowly scale up from there, as opposed to just trying to go all in. And that really burnt me. Nowadays, I'll be honest, I make most of my revenue not from the comics, it's from the comic convention and other endeavors I have in the business. I'm trying to get the comics back to where they are self-supporting, but they're not a revenue generator, which, when you run a business, you have to have some kind of revenue. So I'm struggling with that right now, with how the industry has changed since January, when Diamond went out of business. Didn't go out of business. They filed for bankruptcy, and creators got slung around. It actually began during COVID, when DC jumped ship and went to Lunar, and then Marvel soon after went to Penguin Random
Let me
House.
ask you this. Let me ask you just to get okay.
Sorry, I know I'm all over the place,
No,
man. I'm
no,
sorry.
no. I mean, there's definitely narrative, and again, I think that someone either wanting to start their own comic book, or if they've been making a few and they're kickstarting or whatnot. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I'm using is Kickstarter to get it out there, and I use Amazon for like a graphic novel type of residual long term. But I mean, do we know anyone? I mean, can you be a small creator and actually have this be a full-time endeavor that pays your expenses, or is it just when you become, I mean, and you make it and you get your stories either as an author or artist by a larger indie house like an Image? Is that only when you can start making money? Because I've even heard, I follow a lot of podcasts on comic making too, and I hear a lot of creators that are at the big indie houses like Image, and even there, they're still not making a lot of money, because yes, they're selling 10,000 copies, which is huge. Hey, Red Ram #1 had a print run of 50, but even that's challenging. Do we know anyone? So sorry. So the question is can a small creator actually make this a primary income?
If you're smart, yeah. Not that I'm smart. I don't know, just got lucky, I guess. Yes, but like you talked about, just at Heroes Con this last June, a lot of the buzz was how little you'll make working for Image Comics, which is the #3 comic book publisher. And like if you work for the Skybound department, you will make more because Robert Kirkman's taking care of people. But yeah, and their books sell well. But like a smaller creator at Image, you'll make nothing.
Well, what's interesting is my consulting editor at Comics Magic is Charles Santino. He's been writing since the 80s, and he's an editor. And it's just interesting. One of his books, he pays his artist more than the going rate at Marvel per page, which again is just mind-blowing that it's almost like the whole industry, it's almost like the whole industry's in chaos. And maybe I'll just leave this, and then before we kind of shift gears, but maybe, I'll always say if something's bad, it can only get worse. I'll say if you meet someone and if you don't get along, that's great because it can only get better. So maybe someone who's smart and wants to do this they're on the ground floor of an industry in upheaval, and if you're persistent and you pace yourself and don't burn yourself out and don't overspend, maybe this will shake out in favor because, again, through the Kickstarter model, maybe it seems like that's only gaining ground, at least with the comic segment.
Yeah, it's the problem I have with the industry is I think there's more people wanting to make comics than are actually buying comics, and that's a problem.
Okay, so I'm just a cliche.
No, you're not. No, you're extra special. Come on, don't say that. No, but as a whole, there's so many people, and it's so easy now to make comics with print on demand.
It's easy to do anything. Again, if I was a kid, I wish I didn't have to sit through mindless commercials that I couldn't control. Where today everything's on demand. I would have been making podcasts and movies from my cell phone, and unfortunately, I had camcorders and tape, and it was really hard. But you're right. It's easier than ever to create any media of any type. But
oh yeah, and even, I mean, if you want to get into the bigger picture, there's too much of everything now. We have just too much of everything, and it's hard to find quality in it. And there is quality, but there's so much. You have to dig through so much to find the quality, and that's true for comics as well. I was just in my recent Substack, and I had a project I had to do for a local shop where I had to find out all the books that were shipping in October. It's an insane amount of books. You have massive indies putting out 14 different publishers of just books no offense to those people, but no one's ever even going to hear about because there's just so much. Marvel is a gluttony of just ridiculously bad titles they dump out every month that don't really sell. Comic stores end up tossing them in the dollar bins or not even ordering them. It's to the point where it's everything is oversaturated with comics and the quality isn't what it needs to be.
I'm going to go back. Let me just, because it's interesting, because I was shocked that you were going to say that. And two pieces. Okay, the first one is I collected and worked in a comic book store in the 1990s.
Nice.
And I remember the glut of the 90s. It was the indie books, and it was the glut of Marvel. Because they were just putting Wolverine in everything, Spider-Man in everything. And so, and like I said, I don't follow, regular comics day to day. I follow more of the indie, and that's just my passion these days. But I'm surprised to hear that Marvel is pumping out more books than ever in the digital age.
Mm-hmm. They are. They're putting. I mean, I don't have a physical. Oh, I do have somewhere around here. I have a physical catalog. I can't find it right now. But the Marvel, they do these events like the One World Under Doom, and it'll have 7 miniseries that tie into it, and all these other things, and then they'll put out a Wolverine Deadpool book, and then they'll have Wolverines and Deadpool, and then they'll have just all kinds of just crazy books that nobody's asking for, nobody really wants, and don't really sell that well. But they do it to control market share and to control those shelves. Comic stores only have so much room on their shelves. In my experience dealing with comic shops, whenever I'm distributed, I'm talking to stores, I would say over 25% of them don't even order from what was called the back half of the catalog, which is anything under Image is considered, like Dark Horse is like way indie for them. So Cosmic Times is like super, super indie for them. So, and they won't even order it because their customers don't want it. And we're seeing that kind of take place with the way even the catalogs are situated right now. It's something I noticed in my study. If you go to the Penguin Random House website, they have their main catalog. You can just click on the Marvel catalog, the IDW. You don't have to actually go through their main catalog. And Lunar's the same way.
And then, so the other thing is, you also said there's a lot of indie publishers now. And again, I remember the glut of the 90s, but like, I guess I'm surprised at that. Again, maybe because, okay, I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna invert this because we know comics are so. I'm just gonna say it's very difficult to make money in comic books. Why are so many people, including the big 2 or 3 and these indie keep on trying to kick out a, let's just call it potential. I mean, I don't think comics are ever going to die, but a dying industry. Why are some
Well,
people still doing it if it's so hard to make money?
the big two you got to take off the table
All right,
because
all right.
that's Warner Brothers and Disney. I mean, they have their own
They have to feed the
motivations,
machine, but
to do what
why
they're
are
doing.
so many people still doing indie comics if it doesn't make money and you lose money doing it?
You hit the nail on the head when you talked about page rates and artists. It's I've always said if you don't have a passion for this, don't do it. I think there's maybe 200 people with a passion for this who are doing it. When I was doing, I think the second issue of Good, the Bad, and the Prehistoric before Zach took it over, we were looking for a new artist, and I reached out to this guy who was doing Star Wars Adventures for Image, not IDW. IDW had like a Star Wars license. They were like kiddie comics, and like that's a perfect art style. I reached out to him, and I was offering him a low page rate, and he goes, "Wow, that's more than IDW pays me." However, he turned my job down because he wanted to keep drawing Star Wars comics. People want to do what they like. They don't really want to do what's in their best interest, and that's a major problem. It's a lot of people. This is a second job. It's a hobby. It's again a passion. And this guy was more excited about drawing Kit Fisto which I understand. I love Star Wars. Than he was about getting paid.
Well, and to that credit though, I'll say this: the fact that he kept the lower paying for again, I mean, some people, it's like, they get into it. I think it was like a Brent Still Freeze or something said, I came to do this because I wanted to draw Batman, but by the time he was so skilled and able to get Batman, he wanted to do other characters, because he wanted to do something unique with a different character. But kudos to this artist, because they were able and fortunate enough to keep with what they loved at an acceptable page rate versus just taking it for the money, which is a one-way street, a slippery slope to burn out. So
it was like $40 a page he was making. I don't know if that's acceptable, man. I think that's a little low in my opinion.
Wow.
But
I pay again, my artist team more than, oh my gosh, that's
right.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's what he was making. I don't want to say it, but I said it. That's what he was making for IDW doing a Star Wars comic, which was a good seller for them.
Yeah.
But again, IDW is always walking the tightrope of being bankrupt themselves.
Yeah, I read about that in the last year. Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's wow. They're leaning heavily on Ninja Turtles and Star Trek. That if those licenses go away, IDW is gone. It's weird. It's weird. The people do it for the passion. And I do it for the passion. I love what I do, but I make sure I make enough money to keep doing it. Yeah. Whether I can pay for the house I live in, that's I'm in a fortunate situation.
You can't. I love. I believe it's Maslow's hierarchy. It's a triangle. At the base, you have food and shelter. And I mean, look, if you don't have a safe environment of care to live, you cannot create something you love, which the world needs, and therefore. Absolutely. I mean, these are all things that we all have to juggle in our lives. Very cool. So, okay, we'll move outside the business, but you gave some very real things so that if someone does want to make their first comic book, if they've been dreaming about it for years, I mean, so I think to summarize what I hear you saying is there's more tools out there than ever, which I have found, to self-publish your book and to find your team if you're not a unicorn that can draw, write and publish yourself, and realizing that it's a slow grind, and hopefully over time you are an example of someone who's been able to do it full time, but it's not just doing one thing on one book.
Right.
Tell us, so if you are wanting to make your first book, what could you share with the audience of if you could go back to when you first wrote your Arthur Legend, what would be the top 3 tips you would tell your younger self on to speed up your learning curve?
Well, I will say I did spend a lot of time. I spent 2 years learning how to write comics. And I recommend everybody does that. I think we have a major problem in this industry of a lot of people who, because it's easy to do, I know you when you were on Tyler's podcast, you spoke of the 3-act structure and all that stuff. Learn that. Learn the basics of storytelling, and then learn how to write a comic book. I wish I had spent more time doing that. The my first issue of Arthur Legend Continues reads like a movie script because that was my training. And
Same
so
here.
there's way too much dialogue, way too much dialogue. I didn't let the artist do what they needed to do. So that was tip number one: learn, cut, trim. Write for comics. Don't write for other. Don't try to write for movies.
So is there? And I hear what you're saying. Comics is its own unique visual medium that is sequential art, not moving images.
Right.
But and I've read a lot of books about writing and making comics. Is there? What would you say is the tip, trick, or resource to learn how to write a excellent comic book script?
Several. I think Scott McCloud's book. I think we all have a copy of Understanding Comics. That's always a great place to start. I mean, I knew a lot of it going into because I've been into comics my whole life. But still, it's good to have as a resource. One thing I did. This is a tip I give everybody about writing comics because again, my background's film. Not everybody even has that, but Lethal Weapon is one of my favorite movies. Richard Donner tells stories at just the right pace that I like to tell stories at. You're smiling. You like Richard Donner too? So what I did is I sat down after I deconstructed Mark Millar's Civil War issue 1. I downloaded the script. I deconstructed it to see. He writes this, and the artist draws this. He writes that. So that was part of my journey. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna take Lethal Weapon because I want to write a book that matches that pace.
Wow.
And I'm gonna write the comic book adaptation of Lethal Weapon. How I can take this scene and make it 1 page or make it 2 pages. And somewhere on this hard drive here, this Mac or one of these externals, is that I did about 8-9 pages of a Lethal Weapon adaptation just as an exercise to see how I can do it.
I think that's powerful. That's exactly one of the tips I give in Bootstrapped. I said to learn how to write a comic book script, and you can do this. You can search online for a comic book script PDF, and there are several, some from readily available books in DC and Marvel, and you then get that comic and you read the script with how the final book looks, and you will learn because you're having to re-engineer, and by having to uncode it or decode it, you're going to learn it unconsciously and hopefully consciously. And like you said, with your example with Civil War, and then I love the exercise of the movie deconstruction as well and adapting because, like you said, same thing. I was making amateur guerrilla. I was guerrilla filmmaking in the late '90s, just having fun with my buddies. But realizing that writing for film is different, and the thing I always say too is whether it's a short story, whether it's a comic book, every page, every panel, every word is so important because you only have so much real estate. And anything that's extraneous or doesn't move the story forward is a detractor. So I think that's kind of...
Oh, yeah, even more so in comic. I mean, that's a truism in film and television as well, but even more so in comics, because it's abbreviated. Everything's abbreviated in comics.
Okay, so we got tip number 1, learn how to write a comic script. How about 1 or 2 other tips for
number 2, I would say, and this is the one that bit me in the butt, be prepared for, obviously you're always prepared for failure, but be prepared for success. I wasn't prepared for success. I wasn't prepared for the rapid scaling. Learn more about business. I'm still learning every day. Luckily I have a good CPA who takes care of things on the back end, or I'd be in trouble with the IRS. Get a good CPA. That's a good tip too. Something comic people don't really do is the business side of it. And that's one thing I'm going to toss out there as a tip for everybody.
Listen.
Sorry, go ahead.
Pay your death and taxes. Pay your taxes because you can't do much. Well, I guess you could do a lot of writing from a prison cell, but no one wants to do that. So, death and taxes.
What was it? Where was I going? Track everything. I find that a lot of comic professionals I'll talk to. I used to have this good guy, a guy I would travel to shows with. We were at New York Comic Con, and he was like, "Yeah, we just made $1,000. We're making bank." And I'm like, "John, our hotel's costing us $1,400. You have yet to make bank yet. Yeah. Track your expenses, but track your income, but track those expenses."
One thing I'll just share is, and I didn't put this in the book, but it's a great tip, is I use a spreadsheet. Every time I pay an artist, an editor, a printer, a Kickstarter fee, I'm just putting in it. And so the easiest thing is I learned I used to be a big procrastinator in school. Maybe that's why I wasn't a good writer, because I did it the night before, even though I had a month to do the report. But as an adult, I learned, just if I do it now, I don't have to worry about it later. And then you're going to forget. You're going to forget. You're going to mess up. And then you're going to be in a world of trouble. So just every day or every week, put it into a spreadsheet. I put the date. I put who it was for, what it was for, and the amount. And then at the end of the year, you just do a simple calculation. Equals sum of this column from this C3 to C28. You have your number. You give it to your CPA. Life is easy.
100%. But everything, I mean, all of this is deductible too. Don't forget that.
Well,
That's deductible.
I do a lot of indie comics research.
Exactly. It's all research. It's all research. I'm trying to find a way to make my Netflix bill to be research. Every bit of technology you buy.
You in film and television, so
don't they have comic book TV shows? Track it all, because you'll need the write off at the end of the year, especially if you make money. Like the Comic-Con makes a lot of money, so I need a lot of write offs at the end of the year to kind of bring what I owe Uncle Sam down. So I track everything.
Advanced tips.
Yeah. Also mileage. You drive to the comic shop, that's mileage you can track. Go to a Comic-Con, that's mileage you can track. All of it. And I think you get like 38 cents a mile now or something like that.
Yeah, it's updated every year. I think it's called, get with your CPA. I think it's called E&I. I forget now the terms, the per diem amounts for when you're traveling for work. These are U.S. laws for deducting, because it's a business expense. So
again, no business. That's tip number 2. Learn and keep learning. Like I said, I'm learning new things all the time, new ways to do things. I too keep a massive spreadsheet that I track everything on. It's in the cloud, so something happens to the Mac, it's okay. And it's on my phone and iPad and everything. So that would be tip number 2. Tip number 3. See, tip number 1, know your craft. I always say that. Tip number 2, know the business side of it. Tip number 3, and this is where I fail miserably, is get a team. Have people that a circle you can rely on. Because I know you spoke about not even just people to work with, and that's always good too. And I heard you on Tyler's podcast, the Comics Lost podcast, and everybody should go check that out, by the way. Talking about mental health and all that. And I don't have a large circle of people I can lean on. And it's hard. It's hard to get through the day sometimes. So build that network. It would be tip number 2. Connect to people. Keep those connections going, because in the down times when you're not making money, or the book or the Kickstarter struggling, it's good to have somebody to send a message to and go, man, I'm struggling. Hey, it's okay, buddy. You're going to get through this. Yeah. So that's my 3 tips. Know your craft, know your business, and have a circle. There you go. How's that?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And yeah, just to that, we know that I always say that 1 in 5 people are going to experience anxiety or depression in their lifetime. And you know what? Emotions are normal. And they have a meaning and purpose. And they help. I'm a very anxious individual. I've had panic attacks. And you know what? Anxiety is a good thing, because if you are worrying about a deadline, or if you're worrying in the savannah that a lion's going to get you, it will force you to run and save your life. So there is a purpose behind these emotions. Use them, learn about them. And even if you just have someone to connect with, to share, it is a way to help vent and de-stress. I think it's important to find those things, comforts that help someone de-stress. Exercise is a huge, it's more impactful than any single medication could be for anxiety or depression. So if you are struggling, get exercise, go out for a walk, go for a run, go for a bicycle ride, go to the gym, go to the beach or the ocean, or take a shower, do something to comfort yourself. And people, our connections, we are social creatures, we need to connect. And what's so cool, and this is just kind of a little microcosm of that, but I met you in the real world locally, but we connect on social media. So the way I connected with you for this interview, I didn't text you, but we did it through an online messaging system. And just to reinforce that, the comics is a fairly small industry. And if you are serious about this and want to do this more than just a homemade comic for you or your family, go out, meet people at cons, go out on social media and connect with other creators, and I'll just say on Facebook there are different groups for this, which you can create these individual relationships and make them genuine and reach out. And you know what? If you are having a success, you can share that success with colleagues, and if you're having a bad time, you can also share that for support. So there really are, again, today more than ever, more ways to deal with mental health issues and connect with people in the industry.
I will say I used to, for a short time, I was really into martial arts. That was my thing for a while. And our sensei would always say, I'm learning more from you than you're getting from me. And I find that even if a friend reaches out and like, oh, I'm having trouble, can you help? And we sit there and do a brainstorming session, and he's like, oh, thank you so much. I'm like, no, thank you. Because now I've got the juices flowing again, even though it wasn't my project, but just the process of the brainstorming with someone else and connecting with someone else refuels my tank. So it isn't like they're coming to help me. I'll go help them, and I'll still get that refueling. So it's a give and take, 100%. I mean, I don't want to get too deep in this because you're the expert. I just make comments. I just make silly, funny books. But yeah, it's that give and take, the connection. It doesn't have to be everybody going, good job, Martin. Me just going, hey, good job, Paul, helps fuel me just that little bit more too. So try to stay positive too. I mean, this industry, there's a lot of behind the scenes. A lot of it's, not to be taken seriously, but there's a lot of backbiting and arguing. You'll see it on social media. You'll see some creators just start lashing out at each other for no reason whatsoever. Wow. I always say avoid that at all costs, especially on social media. If you want to do it behind the scenes, that's one thing. Avoid. There's tip number 4 for comics. Avoid conflict on social media. And I know we're in a world where everybody lives and dies by this. Keep the politics in your back pocket, man. Once you start arguing with people about politics online, you've lost the fight for your product. And if you're making comics, the comics are first and foremost. Don't put your political opinions or your opinions on other creators ahead of the success of your book.
Yeah, no, I think it's powerful, and just something that I learned early on, and I just follow it every day of my life. I stay positive. I'm a positive person. For me, the glass is always half full, and the opposite of that is if someone is negative in my life and my time is more valuable and joyful than someone's negativity. As we said, emotions are contagious, and I cut out the negative cancer just immediately. Some of my friends in the past have said I'm a little harsh, and I'm not mean. I'm not mean about it. There's a friendly way to do it, but it's just like this interaction is not benefiting me. Therefore, I'm just gonna not engage. And whether that's just not meeting up with that individual again, or just not engaging in a battle because, like I said, there's so much joy out there to follow. I'm going to follow the joy and my passion. I'm not going to engage with negativity, which whatever you feed will grow. So I just feed the positive, baby.
I agree with that 100%. My friend Kevin Laporte, who you should meet, he has a background in mental health as well. He just retired. He used to work at a facility.
And he's doing his own Substack.
Yeah, he has a great Substack.
I'm just following, but I didn't realize. Okay, I will have to reach out to him.
But he accidentally launched his Kickstarter 10 days early yesterday. And he and I were chatting about it. He's like, oh, it's such a bonus. I said, hey, that's 10 more days that you get to make, that you can generate revenue or you could get funding for your project. He's like, glass half full, Martin. Good job. Always try to find, even in the worst times, you can find something. You can find something to lash onto.
What else? I know that you had said maybe when we were texting back and forth, just maybe there's some things that you'd love to bounce off me. Anything that's come up recently?
Well, I wanted to talk to you about, you said you had an issue at Heroes Con a couple years ago, man. I heard you talking to Tyler about it, dude, that you had a panic attack at Heroes Con.
Yeah, I did.
Was I at that show?
No. Okay.
Okay. Because if I was there, you should have called me, man.
No, yeah, this was in the early days of just Paul being a collector. I tell you when it was. I was in medical school, so it had to have been, I think it was my third year med school. That would put it at 2004 or 5, probably summer of 2005.
I wasn't there. Okay.
I was driving. I was living in my home state of West Virginia. So Charlotte was a 3 to 4 hour, 5 hour drive, and that's when I was going on my circuit. I loved it. Charleston, West Virginia didn't have any cons at that time. It's a small state, less than, just about 1 million people population, and at that time, and just a handful of comic stores. but it was cool. I was just I kind of I was collecting and working in a comic book store in junior high and high school. Go to college, like you said, it was busy. I was studying biology,
Sure.
girls, didn't do as much comics. But in med school, I kind of came back to collecting. But I loved it because I had about 4 cons within a 4-hour drive of my hometown, Charleston, West Virginia. I had Charlotte's Hero Con. I had the Mid Ohio Con in Columbus. I had the Pittsburgh Con. So maybe 3, but there were 3 that I was go every year. So, anyways, that story is, it was probably multifactorial what was going on. I was always anxious, but never really had a panic attack. I was studying for board exam, which is there's 3 board exams, and I think it was the first one and first or second, and they're very. I mean, if you don't pass, you don't go forward in medical career. So it was a very stressful time, and I got up early. I didn't eat breakfast. I'm driving 4 hours. I was just young and just go. I'm in the convention room. I'm flipping through boxes. I get lightheaded. The veil goes down. I mean, I lose my vision a little bit, and I'm just going to the floor. I gently put myself on the floor. I'm literally on the ground in the middle of the comic aisle. People are just walking over me. Whatever.
Hey, man, they get to those dollar bins, dude. Out of the way.
Luckily, the guy that I at the vendor I was at, I'd been to him a few times, and I think they kind of helped me to the side. They get the help of the medic on site. They check my blood sugar. I think my vital signs were fine. So panic and anxiety are diagnoses of exclusion because there are medical conditions like hypoglycemia or other conditions that could cause it. So we think, and then of course afterwards I saw my doctor and got blood testing and everything was fine. But through that, I found a superpower, and it is going to be making its way into the Red Ram because there's a psychiatrist named Dr. Ratchet, like Nurse Ratchet, not Dr. Rashid. But he
Close.
teaches at his local community center deep breathing, which is my superpower that if I today, because of lots and lots of practice of deep breathing, if I get a panic attack, I can hold it in 30 seconds. Because if you control your physiology, the symptoms, you can halt that spiral, because anxiety really is a spiral. As you panic, it increases epinephrine, increases cortisol. When those chemicals are released, your brain goes into fight or flight. So if you can control your breath and your parasympathetic physiology, you can stop it. So I'm putting that into the book. So that was actually how the Red Ram started. I wanted to kind of incorporate teaching into it. It's a little harder than I originally thought because I wanted it to be woven into the story. So that's kind of how I wove it in. But so that's the story of Paul Rashid's panic attacks. And I share that in my self-help book, Recovery Revolution. The first chapter, I share that exact story. And then everything else after that is all about teaching people how to overcome these obstacles.
Yeah, when I heard that story, I was like, "Oh my god! If I was there, you should have called me. I would have come and helped." But I guess it was before I was at the show.
Yeah.
Now I want to let's talk about Heroes Con. Do you still go?
So again, since I'm in South Florida, what I've done is coming from West Virginia, where I think there is now, or at least like 10, 20 years ago, they started doing like one con. I think they called it the Tri-State Con or something. Of course, I live here in South Florida. What I love about South Florida is I'm spoiled because in South Florida alone, we have a population of about 8 million people. Yep. And therefore, there is a Florida Miami con, but it's more of a anime con. So I'm going to cut that one out. But it's a 3-day show. We have the Palm City Con, which you're expanding. It's not only in Delray, Boca area, but you also have Port St. Lucie coming up.
Port St. Lucie coming up, yeah.
And then I have all these one-day small cons that are between Miami and West Palm Beach County, and those are actually my favorite because, and although I've never tabled officially, the table rates are a lot cheaper than one of these MegaCon. And then of course I do go to MegaCon. MegaCon is my super con. I love Orlando.
That's an insane show, man.
It's an insane show. That's where I first, that's where I would meet up with Neil Adams and just hang out in the teens. He was just so awesome. I would just sit there at the booth with him and his wife, and I'd see people shelling out $100, $200 for posters, signatures, a 5-minute sketch, or an in-depth, interior cover sketch. I mean, this guy was just the master. So, anyways, I love MegaCon for the big show, and then all the small shows where it's a small table rate. And you know what? Life is busy, and if you can make a high amount in one day versus spreading that out, maybe a total gross rate over 3 days, but you wear out your immune system, you overdo it, you're traveling, you're staying in hotels, where I can just drive to a one-day show and do it. That's where I think I would like to start tabling.
Well, two things on that. Yeah, I would not recommend tabling at Heroes Con right away because you're never going to make your bank on it. The show just isn't that show. I'm finding it harder and harder, having done this for 16 years now. I've been to probably over 100 shows. In the last few years, I'm watching my revenue just tank. I don't think the average Comic-Con goer is looking for independent comics as much as they were, say, 10, 15 years ago. It's still, I still say table, do it. But like you say, if you can get the price right, that's the balance versus what you're going to make. That's why, again, on the spreadsheet, I track what I make at every show, and I look at from year to year, is this show still a sound investment? Should I keep doing it? Like I'm doing, my next show is going to be the Ocala Comic Con, and that's a good show for me. I cover my cost. I make a few bucks at that show. But even then covering your cost, you got to calculate your cost of product, and that's business. Yep. But to Heroes Con, I recommend going, even if you don't go you don't table. I table there because they guessed me, so I'll always keep guessing me. I'll be there. But the show is probably the best show. That show and Emerald City Comic Con, which is in Seattle, so don't bother with that. That's so far have been the best shows I've been to for networking ever. Even just this year, where I just did light, just some network dusting of networking. The results are still paying off.
Can you give me an example? And I just want to understand, because I get it. Network. I mean, we're here because of networking, but at the same time, can you just give us, without giving too much detail, though, what was one example of a connection that is so powerful that you made at a Heroes Con?
Let's see. Heroes Con.
Was it an artist? Was it a deal where you got into some shops? I'm just trying to
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, I got to sit and hang out with Jim Shooter, so that was well worth it. I have a great Heroes Con story where we're sitting at the bar years ago, and it's just a group of guys talking, and I'm like, I'm done with this conversation. I hop out. My friend Juan's like, bro, do you know who that was you were talking to? That was Mike Mignola. And I'm like, his picture's not in the comic. How do I know who that is? Nobody's wearing name tags, but so those kind of things can happen. I would say one of my best connections was just this year. I know you interviewed him at Central Florida Comic Con. I got to hang out with Josh Blaylock, who he's a great guy. You know him outside of just the interview, right?
I do.
Yeah, he's a good guy. And he wrote a book called How to Publish Comics, Not Just Make Them.
Yeah, I know.
And that was my Bible when I started doing about business. That is a great Bible for the business of comics.
Got it right here.
Yeah, mine's on I carry mine in my backpack still.
And this is what I even told, because this was one of the 15 or so books that I devoured in this journey, my 5-year journey, was he really talks about the business of publishing, because all the other books were how do you make one, but he's giving you the real business. Use a contract on every project you work with, how to use a printer, how to get into solicitation that no one else really did. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's why I had him on.
I mean, I met him years ago, at MegaCon when he was doing G.I. Joe, and I was down here and he was up there.
Oh boy!
But it was great to connect with him at Central Florida Comic Con. But as Heroes Con, you just grab people and go to dinner with, and the connections are great. The only other time I had a better time networking was at Emerald City Comic Con at the after party at the bar. Everybody was there, and I got to hang out with Dirk Wood, who was currently at IDW at the time, and we were talking about projects that never materialized, but at least it was, moving forward with things and trying to push.
You were collaborating with another creator. You were discussing future potential projects, and then life happens. But how cool is that? Absolutely.
And again, it all those conversations, they refuel the battery to keep going, because
yes, they do.
You do a couple cons where you don't make money, it drains your battery pretty low. Not to be negative, but you
Can I
need
ask
that
one?
you need that win.
I want to ask a question about Kickstarter versus at a convention. Let me ask you this, or if you're going through uh, a distributor, a current 22, 24 page floppy on Kickstarter without shipping is going right now, and Tyler Comics Launch did this about a year ago, between $15 and $18.
I think
Now,
that's way too much, but
okay, I'm just telling you what the average.
I know.
What the average is selling. These are again low print runs for a niche audience. Let's call it boutique comic books, and you're not Marvel and DC. You're not the big guy. So I'm just telling you that's what they're going for.
I know.
How do you then? How do you kickstart books?
I do. I've done I think 20 Kickstarters, maybe
How do
15.
you? I'm just curious. Do you price your books differently on a Kickstarter versus at a show? And if so, what is your kind of approach? And again, you are a very experienced publisher at this point, so you teach us.
Currently for a floppy at a show, $5. It's just an easy transactional amount, $5, $5. And I for distribution, I moved to the $4.99 model, so it's $5 across the board. For Kickstarter, I try to keep it as low as possible. I try to target just the regular A cover for $8 plus shipping. Because when you add shipping in, you're talking $12 for a single comic. How do you justify charging that? I have a hard time doing that.
I agree. It is hard to justify. At the same time, when I'm paying my artist, my letterist, my colorist, when unfortunately, I'm a very small fish, but I mean, honestly, when I do Kickstarter a book, I'm literally just recouping the cost of printing the book and maybe 10 to 20% of what I've already invested. So again, over time, if I can sell 100 copies, 500 copies one day, God willing, then I can get my printing costs, maybe go to an offset printing. If you go to 500, 700, 1,000 books, then the cost is going to come down per issue. But when I'm selling 50 copies, I'm stuck. And then just like if it's a tariff, you have to pass it on, your cost, to the consumer.
Do you? I mean, that's the ultimate question. Do
You
you?
have, okay. Business, sir. Business. How can to stay in business? How can you sell something at a loss?
You don't. You plan for success. Like I'm dealing with my current trade paperback that's coming out from Blood. The orders for Diamond were way lower than I wanted. So I actually am losing about, I don't know, 5 cents for every one I ship to Diamond. However, I'm printing over, so I will have enough to, make that calculation work. This sounds mean and cruel. I'm sorry. This is just kind of how I've always looked at it. And again, I'm a capitalist. If you can sell a floppy comic for $50, more power to you, man. There's a sucker born every minute. But if your product isn't of a quality and high enough that you can sell enough to cover the cost, then maybe you're in the wrong business. That's my thing. If every time you make, not you personally, but if every time you make a comic you lose $1,000, then this is not a business, it's a hobby. This is just something you're doing for fun. So your business model should be set up in such a way that you don't lose that money. When I do launch a Kickstarter, like for Arthur, I did spend more than I cost to produce the book. I'm probably about $2,000 in the hole on it. Once the Kickstarter's finished, but you should have a business model in place. I was set up to if for From Blood, the trade paperback, if I sold 100, I would make profit on it. I didn't because of the Diamond situation right now. So I have to hustle that money somewhere else. I'm putting together a business plan that includes store signings, includes I'm going to try Whatnot again, includes different avenues to before the end of this year to be in the black on that project. And everybody should have that approach. People who just say, I'm just going to take a loss on this. Like there is a comic creator that I know is passing the buck from Kickstarter to Kickstarter, not covering the cost in Kickstarter, launching Kickstarter A and then using that money to pay for Kickstarter B and not really fulfilling so this guy's has 4 Kickstarters that are all outstanding because I know he's borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to start getting into some stores at the same time. And again, I'm blessed to have a lot of different stores in the tri-state area, Southeast Florida. What is a realistic thing to expect from an in-store signing? I mean, is it just goodwill, and if you make $50-100, that's great, or do these actually, can they be equivalent because you're the sole audience to everyone coming in that day, that it actually is more than a one-day show? I'm just kind of curious your experience with tabling at a store.
I kind of stopped doing it after a while. I was doing it for Free Comic Book Day at my local shop, Past, Present, Future, and you're competing with Free Comic Book Day. You're just never going to catch up. See, now at a situation where say with you're printing, I see the comic impressions box back there. You're printing with Rich. You're doing a 24-page comic. You're paying about $3 for it.
Yep.
Maybe less if you print enough. The how many do you have to sell to try to break even? Are you going to do it at a local shop? I don't know. I would recommend, if you're going to do something like that, where you are in your journey right now, I would do it with other creators. Try to get a couple other independent guys. There's another guy named Paul in the area who does a comic. Yeah, get with him. He did a signing at Famous Faces. And put together I've been talking to Matt Knowles and Steph Cannon about doing kind of an indie comics tour, hitting like 4 or 5 stores with a few other indie creators. I'm happy to bring you along for that, and to kind of make an event out of it to attract people to the store. Because if I do a signing at Past, Present, Future, are they going to promote it a little bit? It's up to me to try to get my fans to come, and my fans probably already backed my Kickstarter. So they're going to come buy the same book they already bought for probably actually a little less than they paid for it. So no, we talked about, I mean, we can really get into the minutiae of this. We talked about the print-on-demand situation. And that was the thing when I was doing Diamond, or doing regularly distributing books with Diamond. Yes, I was losing money on it because I'd have to print 2,000 to get my per unit cost low enough to cover the Diamond discount. But that means that in my closet, my poor wife, we had 2 walk-in closets, now we have 1 because it's full of comics. I have maybe 30 long boxes of my books that over time, over conventions and over time and deductions on my taxes, I have 0 money in. So if I go to a con and I sell 20 for $5, that's what is it? Or let's say I sell 10 for $5. So that's $50 that is pure profit, because I've paid all the expenses on it at this point. And my print costs were so low. You do the equations and it adds up. The problem with doing the print-on-demand stuff is it's really hard to cover that cost. And then you have to try to justify what you're charging you can charge, just say $16 at a Kickstarter. Nobody's going to pay that in person. Nobody's going to, unless you have a foil cover or something special about it, no one's going to shell out $16 at a convention or a store signing. So that's part of when I talk about the business of it, is balancing those spreadsheets, getting your numbers to such a place that you can afford it. Because at a store signing, if you sell 20 copies, more power to you, man. That's hard to do.
No, I love
Sorry,
it.
Did I answer the question? I know I start to ramble sometimes.
I would definitely love to be a part of a local cohort. I think that would be super fun. And again, then not only are you doing it and it's either successful or not successful, you're doing it with people and it's fun. So you're just having fun doing it together. Together is always better, as one of my good friends says. So with that, is there any other last thoughts to discuss as we are wrapping up?
Number one thought, I'm happy to see that you're still going strong with this. I know we met a few years ago. Like, I don't know if this guy's going to do it. We'll see what happens. And you did it. So that's
serious though that was a thought in the mind that you didn't share because it was a negative thought, but it was like, I'll see if I see him again.
Oh my gosh, dude! It happens all the time. I used to get people pitching me books, and then I'd never hear from it again. And I often say this too. This is a cruel business. I go to New York. I used to go to New York Comic Con every year, and every year there was always 3 brand new publishers with giant displays, monitors, all kinds of crazy stuff. They spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're going to be the next big thing. They're putting out 5 books at once. And I go back to New York Comic Con next year, they're gone. Yeah. And that's this business. I meet a lot of people that disappear before they even leave the room. And the fact that you're still going. What, about 4 years ago we met? 5 years ago?
Yeah, it was probably the first cons right after COVID, and that was exactly right. And for me, I'll say this though, and it's unfortunate. I could have probably gone faster, but between the day to day of the job, which can be very stressful,
Oh, I know.
and production delays and time of the comic book process of on it, getting with my editor and going through each page on the layouts, the pencils, the pens, the colors, the lettering. It does take longer than I expected, but I have staying power. And sometimes, there's a book out there, I forget the exact name, but it's something like Grit. And the thing is many people are just successful if you have the grit to overcome each obstacle that comes to you and not give up. So I'm very gritty and I persisted. So I'm on the other side, and really, I think that what's going to help me get it over is getting the Red Ram to fruition and just getting past issue 1. But the problem is, I'm just going to say my second problem is I'm too unfocused. I mean, I can focus in, but then I get a project like, okay, politics aside, I just thought politics was so absurd. I just made fun of both sides of the carpet, and I made a parody Prez vs. Prez, and my artist is a political cartoonist, a 2-time award winning, and I just said, let's just say how the last election was so absurd. I just can't even believe the circus that the world is in right now. So I just made some fun of both sides. So I just had to get that out there. I had to have fun with it. And then, of course, I do a side project like Bootstrap because I want to teach people how to do it. And so I get distracted. But I do want to build out my publishing ecosystem too. So anyways, those are the things that have slowed me down. And probably good advice to a younger self would say, focus on one project, see it to its completion before you add a second. But that's just my nature. And because I see myself doing this for the foreseeable future, I'm investing in myself, and I am planting these different seeds that I do want to grow. But that's probably my biggest detractor.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the last election. My son's 31 now, but I would call him during the whole thing. Like every time something crazy would happen, like, son, you're living through history. This is going to be remembered in history. And he's like, I would like not to be. He's like, since 9/11, every year is something that's going to be remembered in history. I would like not to. Maybe have a year where it's not going to be remembered in history.
I grew up with Billy Joel. We didn't start the fire.
Heck yeah, man.
World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, Cold War for decades. Thank God I was on the tail end of that.
I grew up in that. So
JFK assassination. The problem is we live in a world that is bigger than you and I. But as my good friend and priest tells me almost every day, be the change you want to see, be a difference maker, because if you make a difference, then you're making a difference in a negative world, and hopefully that will spread and you pay it forward. But I understand it's a scary world we live in, and because of social media, which if it wasn't for comics, honestly, I wouldn't be there at all, because it is so powerful as a connecting agent for my niche interest of comic books. We are being bombarded by other people's messages. So I think this is an important tip to wrap up is be careful of what you let through your guard, through your filter, and what you consume, because we're bombarded more and more every day. There's so much out there. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that 100%, man. Once you see something, you can't unsee it, and once it works its way into your head, man, it's, I believe in that whole. If you look at something too much, it becomes desensitizing, and I don't like that. Especially with politics. I don't want to be desensitized on that. There's too much of it. But back to comics though. We're making comics.
We are making comics, and you know what? That is whether you're making comics, books, videos, anything. Because I use YouTube. I love you. This will eventually live on YouTube.
Cool.
We have the ability to be our own publishers, which is a unique thing in history. I mean, this started in the Guggenheim Press over 500 years ago, and now it is democratized so anyone can do it in any nation as long as they have a phone, which 6 of the 8 billion people on the earth have now at their access. You have more power. You have the more ability to make change than ever. If there's something you're passionate about to change the world for good, make it and give it back
Love
to
it.
the world.
I believe it. That's good. That's a good thought, man. I love it. Put positivity out there, man.
Thank you. And Martin Pierro of Cosmic Times, I want to thank you for having this amazing conversation on the business of comic books. Where can people go to follow you and learn more about you and your books?
I go to the website, cosmictimes.net. I tried to get the .com, but somebody's holding it hostage for a huge amount of money. And then so when I did my Comic-Con, I just went with .net on that. So it's cosmictimes.net, palmcon.net. On the bottom of the page are all the social media links. So I'm on the TikTok now. I'm doing the YouTube thing. I'm trying to do a daily vlog for the month of August.
Okay,
that's something.
So let me ask you about the TikTok, because the problem with TikTok is still images, which is what most comics are, kind of hard to do. So I'm just curious, as you're learning the TikTok and you're playing around, and good for you for doing an experiment for a month, short enough to get some experience, not too long to get burned out. Have you found an approach to sharing comics with either of yourself talking or with the comics or moving images that has been getting some traction on some posts?
Occasionally. I hate to say it. It's an animal. I mean, I'm just doing this vlog recently, but I've been doing TikTok for a couple of years now, and you have to feed the algorithm what it wants. So I've started now on New Comic Book Day, just talking about the books I pick up on New Comic Book Day. That triggers people to follow my page, and then I'll talk about my own books. I do a lot of talking about the Comic-Con. Like if I go to a Comic-Con, I make sure I post 3 TikToks on there. People like to see that, and I'll make sure these are my books I'm selling at the show, blah, blah, blah. For PalmCon, whenever I go to the convention center for something, I always make sure I shoot video there. Hey, it feels very shilly. I don't like that because I'm not I'm horrible behind the table at a con. I'm not a very shilly guy. But I also do Tip Tuesday, where every Tuesday I give a tip about, why is this going off? Every Tuesday I give a tip about something about the industry, about comics. On Monday I put a motivational Monday quote up, and that's kind of gaining traction. And then I mirror that onto, to get into real quick the business of it. With TikTok, you create the content because TikTok has all the functionality you need to create with, including CapCut. Then you move that over to YouTube. You put that on your Instagram Reels. You throw it on your Facebook Stories. So you're able to take this content and recycle it and reuse it. Like this interview, I would love to take pieces of this and throw it on TikTok. Whenever I do a live stream, I try to break it up and reuse it as much as possible.
Well, your wish is my deliverable, because the great thing with, I'm just going to say I use Riverside. I've been using video since the 90s, and this is by far the best video platform I've found. And without cost, they will make approximately 8 40-second to 50-second segments, and I will be sharing those little snippets and all the goodies from this conversation. And of course, you should be able to then share those among yours. So let me know if you can't, and I'll make sure you get those. And it's great because I love long form. I love the whole video. That again, like every week when I have my favorite comic podcasts come down about making comics, I listen to them, and I love listening on the drive. But for those that just need a little something in the for a 50-second snippet that you're going to teach something very quickly, this does it all. So again, TikTok and Riverside for those who need some more tools. The digital tools are amazing. So with that, I thank you so much.
Thank you.